Okay, let's call this meeting to order of the Kingston Arts Commission, October 9th, 2025, 4:15 p.m. And welcome everyone to this great, I don't know, like a party tonight. Okay. Firstly, we will, anyone want to motion for approval of the minutes of the last meeting, September? No. Can I get a motion? You know? Oh. Motion? Motion? Okay, so the motion, got a second on the motion to approve the minutes in September meeting? A second. Dina? Will we take a vote? Any questions, amendments, corrections?
I saw my correction.
Okay.
Sarah Kramer Harrison's name. Is not correct. It's not Berg, it's Kramer Harris. You know, we represent. Was not a was that I'll search. There it is. Second page shows.
Thank you, Sarah. Any others? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes with the aye? Aye. All not in favor, nay? Okay, so moved. We are happy to welcome our guests this evening, Adrian Manuel, Project Director, and Janet Hollingsworth, Fabrication Center Director of the Metro, a project of the Novo in Kingston in Midtown. Welcome.
Should we pick it up?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's great to be here. For those of you that are in person, we have a model of Metro on the table. If you want to engage with it, you're welcome to. But we will walk through a couple slides and then ask questions and we'll have a conversation. So for those of you that are not familiar, the Metro is located, it's a project that's located on 2000 Prospect Street and here in Kingston, 75,000 square feet. It will be a learning hub that is really driven by connection, curiosity, creativity, bringing people together across the region, opening in 2026. And we are the founding leadership team here today to talk to you about it. So my name is Janet Hollingsworth, and I am the Fabrication Center Director. So about a third of the building that you'll see in a minute is the Fabrication Center. But my background is in a number of different places and spaces, and I'll just share a really high level background of my experience, and then I'll hand it over to Adrian. But my career started in engineering. I worked as a structural engineer working with artists on large scale sculptures and installations. So art commission meetings were not an uncommon thing for me, and even in my early career. And from there, I actually got into woodworking. I studied with my grandfather. I was a woodworker. I started a woodworking company. This was all out in Colorado. And at that point, I kind of opened up my trajectory to include kind of community learning. And so I became engaged in public libraries. And so that was really where maker spaces, fabrication centers, and connecting with people became very, very meaningful to me in my life. And 15 years ago. So I've been leading maker spaces, making maker spaces, and bringing people together in a lot of different kinds of environments since then. So for over a decade, this has taken me to Washington, D.C., to Boston, And now I get to call for this battle in my home, which I'm really honored to do. So I am so thrilled to be a part of this project, to be working with Adrian on this, and to be in conversation with all of you about this really exciting project. So we'll get into the details and share as much as we're able to with you today. But I'll hand it over to Adrian.
Hi, everybody. Adrian Manuel, project director for the Metro. A little bit about myself. I'm actually born and raised in Kingston. Both parents on both sides, multiple generation Kingstonians. Grew up in Midtown, over on Franklin Street, right by the library. So I knew the Metro building as a kid, which kind of sat there and probably didn't do the best behaviors around it as a kid. Quiet old building. And then I started my career after going to college down in the city in 2000 in Kingston as a teacher's assistant for students with special needs at the Children's Annex, which I don't believe exists anymore, but it was a school for students with special needs. Did that for a year and saw that New York City had a high shortage of teachers, so went down to New York City, became a teacher, taught social studies in middle schools in the South Bronx, and then about 5 years later became the youngest principal in New York City, middle school principal, and was put into a special program to turn around failing schools, which meant I had a great opportunity to be in a community with folks to try to redesign programming back then for the 21st century, but schools are always behind because they're based on the old industrial revolution. So to try to bring innovation, arts, Socratic thinking, holistic approaches that I thought were missing in schools to public schools. Then was fortunate to come back to my hometown a second time to be the principal across the street at Kingston High School. Before the new buildings were built, I was the principal that was part of the visioning for what the new campus could look like, and the idea of bringing smaller learning communities and more holistic and forward-thinking pathways. Then left and ran a boarding school down in DC, a inner city charter school in DC, and spent the next decade or so of my career in charter schools. And I've been fortunate to pretty much be at all roles. I've been a high school principal, middle school principal, superintendent in pre-K through 12 out in California, executive director, founded and designed some middle schools and high schools with teams, and some kind of not on my own, but some with my own ideas over the past few years. And super excited to be back in town. My family is as well, to be in this project, because I do remember being a kid, going to the boys club and then the boys and girls club, and being at the high school and always thinking like, you know what, these resources weren't there when I was a kid. I was fortunate that I lived like 4 houses down from the library, so I could go there and, you know, get on the computer or get some books and encyclopedias and have access and have really good adults around me. But something like the Metro did not exist. And so we're excited today to kind of share where we are in the project and the visioning. And it's, you know, the word exciting is not the sufficient adjective, but I probably need to be more caffeinated this time of the day. But it's a very exciting project because in many ways, the vision is still unfolding. And there's still opportunities for input from folks like everybody around the table who I don't know everybody, but there's opportunity for more insights and feedback from now and moving forward. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Great. So what we're going to share kind of the most insights on right now are really this construction phase of the project. So the design, the build out that's underway, and the progress updates that we are able to share, especially if some of you have maybe heard about this project over the last couple of years. There are some exciting updates that we can share. And as Adrian mentioned, a lot of the work is emerging. So in the conversations that we're having, like the ones today, and really every day, every week, we are in conversations with members of the community. We are listening and learning and understanding our place in this network and in this ecosystem. So we want to make sure that we have continuity, that we have cohesion, that we are connected to the other initiatives that are going on in Kingston. Do you want to?
Yeah, so right now, and for the past year or so, we're in the construction phase, right? So if you pass by, you may have seen when the windows were boarded up, things look like what's going to happen there. To more recently, you see some beautification. You see the windows are there. You can see some landscaping that's starting. You kind of see things taking shape, but we're still very much in the construction phase. And what that means is separate from the building being constructed and the internal side, even the design and the layout of spaces in terms of what will be there is still somewhat part of the process right now. And in the months ahead, we'll be moving closer into some of the visioning around programming and so forth. But you were going to talk about that. I jumped in.
No,
Sorry.
it's all good.
Yeah.
We'll kind of keep moving. I think that, this is a little bit hard to understand for those of you that are here. You can see the actual 3D model on the table, but the building itself is 75,000 square feet. And as I mentioned, about a third of it is the fabrication center, which really falls under my purview. But there are a number of other spaces that are starting to take shape and kind of finding their identity. This was largely based on conversations that happened prior to Adrian and I even getting involved in the project. As many of you probably know, it has been going on for quite some time. So we were able to pick up the baton and a lot of amazing work that was done by the youth design team here in Kingston that kind of gave us a roadmap to work with. So the types of spaces include, like I mentioned, the fabrication center. We'll zoom into that in just a moment, and I'll let you kind of give overview, voice over to the other areas.
Yeah, and one way to think about it is that these spaces, even some of the ones that I'll describe, they're still currently under either like visioning process or just ideation, and some are a little bit more baked in than others at this point. So in terms of the spaces that we have now, and I use this term, I don't know if this will be the term we use in the future, but I see some of these spaces as like resource spaces for the community, like true resources for sort of three types of stakeholders. One is the youth, and I'm not going to define that because I don't want to give any numbers and offend anybody, but the youth. And one way to think about that is we want to situate learning for, who we want to situate learning for. But learning will be at all ages, but specifically trying to think through the youth. The second is just community members, and that could be anybody from just somebody who wants to come in and access the resources in the metro to an emergent entrepreneur who wants to do something a little bit more special and technical inside the space. We'll talk about that. And the last group is organizational partners and organizations in the community. And so if I left anybody out, I assure you, if I gave you a broader definition, I would encompass everybody. But I think of it as community members, youth, and organizations. And so some of these spaces, just to walk you through, and I won't show you exactly where they are because there's a lot of schematics up here, but so one of the resource spaces is the creative studios. That's one of them. So in the creative studios, one way to think about this is imagine being able to go into a space that has high quality audio, video, and music recording, acoustically prepped, the right types of rooms, almost like a university kind of space where it's set up with all of the equipment, but also it's situated for learning. So we'll have these spaces for, podcasting, recording video, recording music. Not only recording it, let's say if you're an entrepreneur and you need to rent or get access to space, but young people being in there to see what it looks like to professionally record, learn all the technical systems, build confidence in whatever they're doing, and have that kind of access whenever they want to come over to the metro. Along with that will be Creator Labs, which is like a post-production space where you get on your computers and work through the edits and sort of other pieces artistically of whatever you're producing, be it a show, a podcast, an audio recording, or so forth. We're going to have teaching and kitchen rentals. So there'll be a teaching kitchen. So imagine organizations or anybody, community members being able to offer a workshop or a series of seminars on nutrition or food preparation or cultural practices, historical, present, and future around food and so forth. You'll have a fully outfitted space, but there will also be kitchens, a baking area and a commercial kitchen. So if an organization needs to rent a space, we know there's other spaces around town, but in some of the early sort of surveying demographically, we know there was a want by organizations for just more commercial kitchen space. So we'll have that there, but we'll also have in-house food programs. So can't have young people in a building without some access to food, let alone healthy, nutritious, and locally produced and grown and food with education around it. We're looking at something like a repair garage for smaller engine repair and things like bicycle repair and some other things to help people build skills and confidence, but have those resources. There'll be a rather sizable event space with a stage and a drop-down screen. Fits about 500 people, but don't quote me today because we're still designing it and some things will take up the space. But imagine an event space that an organization can use for celebrations, performances, community events and workshops. Young people can use to get their opportunity and their at-bat in front of people, to show presence, to build confidence, to get their voice out in so many ways. There'll be a space that's a salon and wellness space. So an actual hair salon will be in there. Focus more so on probably women of color with like hair braiding and some practices, but there's going to be some other resources in there. We have an outdoor space, which we're still thinking about, which will probably be for like maybe picnicking or small events when it's warm out, but nevertheless an outdoor space. And with young people, you want indoor, outdoor, so that whether it's communal, just kind of getting together to collaborate, to having a pop-up activity outside or something like that.
Is it covered, the outdoor
We're-
space, or is
well,
it lesbian?
Yeah, good question. Right now, the idea is that it's uncovered, but it actually is undesigned, and that's a good, glad you brought that up. One of the goals that I have is in the months ahead to work with some young students, some high school students very likely, to look at that outdoor space and have input and perhaps co-design and some recommendations from the youth, similar to what happened in the past where they were looking at inside furniture and other things. So we're looking at that outdoor space and trying to get some inspiration from young people. We'll do a project with that. So there might be some coverings that come out of that process, but we really want to bring the young people in a similar fashion to before, when some of the designs that we're looking at now for like a tree inside and some of the aesthetics, to do that with the outdoor space. So we'll see what we come up with, or what the young people come up with. There'll be tenant spaces, which are, unprogrammed spaces for now, but you could imagine in the future, perhaps an organization being inside the metro, or a program, short-term or long-term, perhaps a small business of something that kind of emerges out of the folks or the residents in the metro who are learning and making, or perhaps something else that just needs some time and evolution for us to figure out. So we don't plan to open with everything figured out. We want to evolve and be responsive and adaptive to the needs and aspirations of the community. I believe I hit all spaces, but I didn't go in order. So
Did you go to tenant and unprogrammed space?
that was the one I was just saying, which is we have these spaces, and the tenant spaces run anywhere from sort of think about well, it's easy for me to say an average classroom size because I've been in school so much, but about 500 square feet to about 1,000 square feet. Most of them are probably somewhere in between. Those are spaces that could either in the future be a space to rent out, like as an organization or business, or a couple other things. I think we're not planning to open with all of the tenant spaces ready to go. We want to actually do some work with the community to figure out maybe some best use cases and also a framework, since we can't fit everything in there, and we'll probably have more desire and demand than we actually can fit in the square footage. So we want to be thoughtful about what's the best thing to put there, not because it's a good idea, but because it's actually responsive to perhaps either community need or youth need, or fills the void or builds and adds value to something that's already happening. Because as you guys probably know, there's all kinds of things happening around Kingston for youth, for other folks. So we don't want to, we're not there to compete. We're not here to compete. We're here to add and complement. And we're very much centered around learning. That's why you heard me say youth is one of our big stakeholder groups. I'm going to stop there because we're going to come back to some of this later, and we have some time for Q&A, but I think it's a good chance to now flip to the Fabrication Center.
Yeah, we'll zoom in on that. I think just one other kind of high level, while this visual is still up, to just to kind of double click on, is that much of this is still emergent, as Adrian was saying, and these are the seeds that we are starting to kind of orient the space with. But the project itself has taken place in a phased approach. So you'll see a little bit more fidelity around the Fabrication Center, and that's because that part of the project was in an earlier phase of work. So it is further along, while much of what Adrian was talking about is still seeking input from different stakeholders. And I think that the through thread to just really stay centered on is around learning. So that is really what this space is centered on.
And as you flip slides, I forgot to mention the meeting spaces, which are also accessible for community organizations and young people, which will be like classroom or meeting spaces. So imagine an organization needs a space for a meeting like this. We'll have conference rooms or classrooms or flexible spaces where meetings, associations, workshops, seminars can happen for those same audience groups.
And is that what you're considering a metro service also? I'm not.
Oh, metro services are more like internal, like where we need to house facilities and internal staffing and things of that
So it's not
nature.
a service that's being provided. It's
No, it's ours.
Yeah, and part of that is that the building itself, one thing that we didn't really touch on, but the building itself is a is run by geothermal and solar. So there's quite a few spaces that just need to house the batteries and the facilities.
Staffing for all these spaces, is it Metro staff or are you actually contracting with?
Yeah,
people?
this will be a blend. These are things that are starting to unfold depending on which space we're looking at. There may be Metro staff that runs it or a Metro steward that kind of owns the responsibility of kind of shepherding like what happens in different spaces. For the fabrication center, that will largely be run by Metro staff. But there will be a blend for the other spaces.
And just to understand in terms of who you're serving, I understand that this is a learning center and that you've sort of focused a key stakeholder are the youth, but is this like pay for, fee for, service for fee? Like, how does that work if you, want to use your, I don't know, fabrication center? How are you thinking about that?
So I think the best answer at this point is when you think about the access points, so there'll be access points around learning, and one of the commitments and goals and values is to try to make learning as accessible to the community as possible. Understanding that there may be times where that comes with a fee or something else, depending on who's offering the learning and who's using the space. Then there's the idea that another access point are folks who might be like entrepreneurs or folks that want to come in and hone their craft, maybe rent the space professionally for their whatever they're doing. And we're still thinking through what that will look like in terms of fees and programmatic structures. Part of that is just spending more time in the months ahead after we get through the design phase to understand sort of the needs, the ecosystem, the market, and what would make sense. And also situating, whether it's marginalized groups or Midtown or so forth, finding ways to situate folks who could really benefit from the space or the low cost access or so forth, kind of prioritizing that. And then lastly, like organizations and community groups that want to use the space. And part of that may be a fee for the access, but the other piece of this is we're looking at things like exchange and generosity. So, you could imagine if an organization wanted to come in and promote an information session or advocacy about something and it's free to the community. I don't foresee us making that something where they have to pay for the space. And so those are the types of things we have to think through all of those sort of nuances, but we're also in the design phase now, and we're going to go more into our programmatic phase the second half of the year, which will be actually a lot of robust conversations to figure some of those things out, knowing that there'll be a lot of aspirations and things that folks want to do, but there'll be some limitations where we say, no, we're not the place that can do this and that, but we are the place that can do these other things. Sorry. But again, our commitment and the value is the community providing the access, situating things around learning, focusing on supporting maybe more emergent or entrepreneurial pursuits. And then really also another value is like local economy and local sustainability, right? So making sure we have young people in the community that have the skills and competencies, and I call them at-bats, but the practices and the learning for perhaps meaningful work in town. Right, rather than always feeling they have to leave or go away. So really thinking about the future of the city and kind of what that means. So that's not for us to decide just on like a demographic study or our knowledge of the town, but the conversations that have to happen. And then, the interesting through line of trying to find a way to please some folks, but take into consideration, what the whole vision of the Metro is and what that means when we think of things like cost and access and so forth. So yeah, that's gonna be the fun part.
Yep.
I have a question. This is quite wonderful. This is what we've been to see in something like this. And actually, the whole thing about having spaces for people to meet. This is how the Midtown Arts District itself,
Right.
getting places, spaces, finding spaces to meet. Is there? I have hope. One thing. How do we bring up ideas or come to you with ideas or suggestions or questions?
Well, I would say this, and
Because I have a whole lot of things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bring them up here, but.
well, I would say this, I might be breaking a protocol, but I think we have a couple more slides we'll share, and then we were anticipating questions at the end.
Okay.
And part of that, the reason I say it is part of that is at the end, we have our contact info, and we'll talk a little bit about like our timeline, and I think that may help. And if we don't answer the question, make sure you remind me that we didn't answer the question, but There's a couple more slides to get through, and then we'll see if we answer that, but you'll get our contact and we'll go through it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so because I
This one quick question, for profit, non-profit?
No.
Five oh one C already settled, everything's cool, all right. Do you see yourself supplanting 721 or Cornell, or looking to be part of a huge community resource?
Very connected, very much a connected community. That is something that we are here to also listen and hear where we need to be connecting into, tapping into, and the different creative ways to do so. So I'll share a little bit more about some of the specifics that are happening in the Fabrication Center. Part of that is because there are facilities and equipment and tools that are not easily accessible in other areas. And so I have been surveying different industry areas and different collective groups in the region to see what is it that you outsource. You know, so just really understanding where services are being sought elsewhere and what we might be able to provide kind of within the region. So I think that there's a much more robust conversation to unpack from that topic that you're bringing up. But I'll kind of move us through the Fabrication Center, and then we'll see if we can get back to that as well. So zooming into that kind of top third area, the north third area of the building. As I mentioned, because the Fabrication Center is further along in the phase of its journey, we do have a bit more fidelity on what is included there. So we do know that it will include a wood shop, a hot shop, and so within the hot shop, that would also include metals, torch work, welding, jewelry making, and a water jet cutter. Fiber arts, I also have been referring to that area as the squishy lab because it will include experimental materials. So while we are not bio level 1, we will be able to support experimentation with different kinds of materials, especially around sustainability. That's an area of personal passion of my own, but it is one that will certainly come into this space as well. Things like bioplastics and exploring renewable materials in innovative ways. The digital fabrication space is sort of that purple center area, and that's where you'll have laser cutters, 3D printers, advanced printing, and things of that nature. And that's where a lot of the workshops and classes will take place. There's also a finishing booth, so for volatiles and spray painting, a CNC machining room, and what this does not include a visual of is there is also a space for residents. So makers and residents will be a part of this model. So those are some of the kind of at that high level. It's really this beautiful kind of combination of traditional craft materials and methods and new technologies and emergent methods. So that interface is one that I think is extremely exciting. It means that there are many, many avenues in to hands-on making, and the idea of having community design challenges where we as a collective can come together and create and then make and then actually fabricate. All of that is something that can happen under this umbrella.
What is CNC?
CNC is computer numeric control. Basically, it means that you are operating a machine to route different materials, like furniture or shelving or signage or fabric. You can do a lot with the CNC machine, including pattern making. So it plays very nicely with many of the different areas. It actually, that CNC room plays with every single other space that we have, which is quite exciting.
But so my husband runs a fabrication center, and my familiarity with such a center is that, you know, you have a client. And thinking about the capabilities that you're offering here, this isn't just about learning. This is about producing a product. And so I guess my question is, to what end?
Yeah.
Like, is this for artists? Is it for
Yeah.
commercials? Is it residential, like
So-
architectural millwork, or?
So I would answer that, probably the best way to frame it is pilot scale production. So we're not doing mass production in this facility. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense given the range of audiences that we need to serve. So I think about pilot scale where maybe you're trying something out, you're figuring out what you're going to make. Now, if it's something that's a smaller, magnitude, like laser cut jewelry or something that's out of a novel material, you might actually be able to have a pretty robust business that is supported by this space, and it is still shared by many. millwork, architectural work, things that are really a business that requires 8 hours a day, 7 days a week to operate. That's something that's probably outside the purview of what the space would contain. However, these are still conversations for us to discuss and to really think about and understand where the needs are. So I wouldn't say that anything is.
But like if an architect was working on a residential project and they needed a special banister fabricated or something like that, it would be a one-off. That's somebody you would imagine using.
Perhaps. I think it really depends on what that comes down to. I mean, if it's something where it displaces workshops that we're running in the community, that means that it would be at a detriment to community services that we are looking to provide. If it's something where there's a day of the week where something like that happens, or perhaps to Adrian's point earlier, if there's an exchange that's happening, where that architectural group is actually providing another day of the week, perhaps they're providing a workshop where they're teaching young people and pulling youth into the process, whether that's a new kind of apprenticing model that we don't yet know exactly what it looks like. But if there's an exchange like that that's happening, that is where there's viability. It's a little bit less like I pay to just simply get access.
So it'd be more like I have to apply with my proposal.
I don't think we have the answers to that quite yet. I think that, again, this is very much like the conversation to be listening and learning to see if that is something where, if that is in fact the greatest need in the community. What I would want to be very mindful of is that at the displacement of the youth that might be across the street and young people from the Boys and Girls Club that are coming in to have workshops that we're offering and learn about these pathways and possibilities. So I think it's a balance. We need to strike that balance, but we need to first listen very deeply to what those different needs are. So I would say I do not have the answers for what that calendar and cadence of events is going to look like, but it's important for us to understand the many different stakeholders that we need to balance and then prioritize.
See at least 7 representations here of people who have to run this. Are we sourcing staff from the community first, or are you bringing them in?
So, I mean, the desire is very much to seek local talent. That would be something that's very important to prioritize. Certain, methods and workflows are a bit specialized, so there may be a blend, but it is important that we reach the local community. And also foster that. I think that, I'm always very, very interested and open to models where you have kind of internal apprenticing that can even happen, where a younger person is being mentored and becoming the next technician for the hot shop. Those are things that I think we don't yet, again, though nothing is written in stone at this point. And I think that these are really, really good questions to be asking, and that we do want to make sure that we are, seeking our local community for, the answers that we are hoping to provide.
Time check, we're over 5 minutes, so we'll get through these last things very quickly. But the nice part is we've been doing a flow of Q&A as we go through, so.
Yes, thank you. So just kind of moving it along to the types of offerings that we are imagining. So again, this is not comprehensive, and this is very much to say that we are open to ideas and conversations around this, but we imagine that there will be a pretty robust set of offerings of workshops, skill building and exchange programs, residencies, as I mentioned, guided access, where again, there's staff there to help someone who's on their learning journey in different types of spaces, and that's across the metro. And entrepreneurial support as well. So whether that's someone who has a startup in town or someone who might have an idea that has yet to be brought into reality, I think that those are the types of things we aim to support.
Yeah, and just to go through these, and we may have said a few of these things already, but when we think about programming and kind of that next phase of designing programming, there'll be something around like meeting, co-working spaces, gathering events, a focus on wellness. We'll have the culinary program and creative services. Mentioned more than once just the focus and the centering around youth, but like just different pathways and access points for youth, kind of from K to 20, 25 plus. Because how a young person accesses a space in elementary is very different than a middle schooler, very different than a 20-year-old. So one way to think about it is like early exposure, where young kids can come over and just learn about food in the culinary program or making something to the point where they get to high school, perhaps they're doing more deeper projects that might even be credit bearing or based to maybe even collegiate things to things outside of that. It's also a place for events and celebrations in partnership with community members and organizations. There's going to be also a pretty big focus, one of my personal passions, on civic engagement and new ways to bring people together, whether it's to talk about community-based issues or lifting up the issues of past, present, and future, trying to bring intergenerational voices into a space in different ways that I think are really important in today's world. Also opportunities for things like markets and pop-ups and more, especially as we think about like residents and makers and entrepreneurs in the space. And then I think to the question earlier about supplanting, we have no plans to supplant anything. In anything, it's about adding value and enriching. And so being complementary to other programs across the city, however we can. That's also going to be the interesting place, because if there's already a very impactful program across Kingston that is doing very well, there's a question like, would that make sense to bring something like that in the metro or use the space and the resources for a program that's currently not here in the current catchment of the city? So we're really trying to be diligent about sort of what's here, what's missing, where we can complement, where we can add value, what organizations might need that perhaps they don't have in their current space, where the metro could be a great satellite or a partner space. These are all the things sort of in the commitments and the thinking that we have to do, and most importantly, the conversations we have to have. And maybe we should just go to the next slide, because we are over and I'm going to get eyes. So we touched on some of these things, so we won't go through everything here, but currently right now, and as we wrap up the year, which is going pretty quickly, we're still very much in the design phase and the construction phase. Just trying to make sure we're in the timeline with the architect and construction team. But we're also starting to have conversations like this, getting the ideas out there about the metro, having some conversations here and there, giving some tours to folks who'd like to come and see the space. But very much in the early part of the new year, going into the new year, into the spring and so forth, we'll be deepening our community input work, whether it's with youth, with organizations, with commissions like yourself, to further come to some of the questions we may not have answered today, or we may not have given a clear answer today, to try to further get to a point of like clarity around what some things will look like and what programming is needed and wanted and aspired towards. So that's kind of where we are.
And one thing to add to that, is it DJ?
Yes.
Kind of picking up on what you were asking a little bit earlier. One thing that I will just take a pause on is the community outreach and hands-on workshop that we've been doing so far. Obviously, this space is not open, so we have been going into community to become familiar faces, to share methods and tools, and any portable machines that we have, we bring out to the Boys and Girls Club. We've been in safe homes in town. We want to make sure that the young people that we want to serve, that we want to lower the barriers to entry for, we need to have a continuity. You can't just start a space and then just expect everyone that you want to serve to just show up. So that dedication of going out, doing this outreach, we are doing that now. We will continue that through whenever our soft opening is next year. That will be something that is a commitment that I can say that we are standing behind, because that's very, very important to us that that context is made, and that we are making sure that the machines, the tools, the methods, the joy, the making that we are doing is in fact in the community, and that we are building that bridge ahead of time. So that's just something that I think is an important note to mention, because it is very important that at some point, let's say the young women that I'm working with at the Safe Home, they should be the stewards of these spaces in the future. In order for that to happen, that bridge needs to start now in order for them to then see themselves as individuals that could be a part, of these spaces and running different things and finding their passion.
And this is serving Kingston specifically. It's like there's criteria to be engaging the services.
That will be part of the thinking process is how you create, and we can go to the next slide, because we're over time, and I want to at least give an advance apology to anybody's time that we're taking up, because I'm very mindful of that.
Come on, I'm good.
Oh, it's yours? Okay, good. So, here's contact info for us. Take care. And, that is one of those big questions out there, which is sort of access to membership and sort of how we prioritize the Midtown community, the youth, the folks who want to come in and perhaps whether it's pay for spaces or so forth because of who they are, what they represent, but also sort of within Kingston, and then if there's anybody on the outskirts. So these are some really interesting questions, but we're also trying to be careful of institutional types of signals. So, you know, I sometimes use the word membership, but I don't like the word membership for how we're thinking about it, but there will be some gradation of how you access the space. And, you know, very likely young people will probably be the ones that have the most free resources in there for things because that's a value. But the other gradations of things we will be through conversation and figuring out. Yeah.
I have a question. Is there a certain metric, like a certain percentage of this time of the space is dedicated to learning? So if the salon is being used by someone who rents the space for 20% of the time, then 30% of the time is for learning and, you know, training a new person in those skills or barbershop skills, you know?
Some of it is a little bit easy to ideate on because some of it is just, there's a rhythm to some things. So when you think about like K through 12, at least kids who are in district schools or independent schools, so independent school, Kingston Catholic. So either Kingston City School District, they're in school during the day. And so you could imagine probably less young people during the school days, but we have been thinking through the homeschool community and some of the other folks, like how perhaps they can come in and access resources. So it won't be that they're not allowed in, it will be that we'll probably prioritize that time for how to make the best. And I would think that probably later in the day, there might be a bit of a flip on that switch in terms of probably more young people coming in, especially after school hours. But in terms of how that's going to look, that really is going to be driven by the programmatic design, which we're kind of diving deeper into in the second half of the year. So there's still some unanswered questions there.
I guess I'm also wondering, like, is there a mission that says this amount of time? You know what I'm saying?
Not at this point. Not at this point. And that's probably because we don't want to start from there before we engage with like what's the potential of the programmatic sort of what we can do. So just to give you a sense, like the resource spaces that I mentioned, like the salon, we're designing it right now. And one of the things that we're trying to do is like maximize adaptability and the way it can kind of have an evolutionary progression. So we're putting more things in there than we think we'll actually utilize in the first year. So that if a program grows or if something needs to change, or if we need to split up something that becomes more of a, you know, I won't even give examples, but like we are trying to build in the flexibility and think through, but we're not starting with kind of what we do in schools, which is like, well, we try to get this many kids to pass the test and this many kids to get Regents credits and X, Y, and Z. So how do we backwards design for that? That's how schools run. We're more of like, what is needed? How do we outfit the most amount of resources for the space? How do we keep to our values? And what could that look like throughout the year? Because the year has a rhythm of the school cycle and some other pieces. And so some unanswered questions, it will be fun to answer that, but I think we're trying to stay away from that now and maximize how we can design the space for adaptability.
Sorry, you go first.
You go.
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. When I think about youth and access, especially to a lot of these offerings that seem like kind of like enrichment programs too, one issue is always transportation, right? And you talked about it as, you know, you talked about scheduling where like the youth focused things will clearly not be during school hours, but then, you know, it's always like, how do you connect the start of the milkshake? How do you get the children there?
These are all very much on our radar. I mean, transportation has come up in, I think, almost every single conversation we've
And we're
had.
thinking through it. And, yeah, I mean, the good thing is, I mean, I was a Midtown kid. I had to walk to the high school and I had to walk to Bailey and back. No bus to Bailey.
It's just,
So I think there's this piece of it, which we know that we're centered in Midtown. And there are hundreds of youth in Midtown that are currently not involved in all types of things. And there's youth that are involved. So we know we're walking distance. We know we're biking distance. We started to think, but I think as we develop out the programs, we'll continue to think through like issues of transportation. So does there need to be a shuttle run or a van or something else? We know those are the issues, but that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves right now. And the other piece of this might be that, you know, depending on the programs and sort of the interest and where we think there's going to be the highest engagement or opportunity, perhaps that's where we focus on like transportation solutions. Maybe it's not about all times of the day. Maybe it's like, we know this is going to be the high time for young people. Can we do something with the shuttle? Can we do something creatively. So we know it's an issue, but we are fortunate that we're walking distance to a lot of families, but we also want to make sure we're accessible to everybody around Kingston. So good question, but kind of in the back burner for a little bit of time as we think through programs.
So I want to just close this section with my question, if that's okay with everyone on the commission, so we can move forward with our agenda. But I want to follow up with my question about how you plan on doing outreach to the community. Is it through meetings like this, or are you going to be scheduling community meetings in various locations?
I think
May I just attach that because my thought was the same way. Do you have working groups, task force, boards or committees in existence now? And what is the plan going forward? So it really is community responsive.
it's a lot of groups, working groups, task force, and you can see I'm in a government building. So I think the quick answer is we are very much focused on the construction design phase now, just because we have a timeline to try to keep to so that the construction can move forward and kind of need to give some layouts by a certain time. As we move into that program design phase in the second half of the year, I think there's a lot of things on the table, but we haven't created full defined strategy yet. So we've been thinking through things like getting in front of organizations and meeting with teams of folks, to having focus groups, to being at events where the forum is already there to like this to speak to folks.
Yeah.
And I think, one thing is that there's the formal things like organizations and groups and advisory committees and so forth. And then personally, it's about the people in the community. And so not everybody comes out to be at a formal group that can be threatening, that can feel a certain way. So we're trying to think honestly through the whole gamut of like, can we be at the Kingston Kids events? Can we be at the Maker's Day events? Can we be at the Kingston Library events? Where can we be? Can we be at the high school at events? Can we do these things? So one thing I would say to this group is you have our info. Do you think of anything where it would be good for us to even be a fly on the wall because we can learn something? We don't always have to come and talk to people. If it's a place where we can come and learn and there's some really good info that we should be thinking and considering, and maybe even some folks or constituents that we should be connected to, that's one way. The other is we are thinking through that, but I would say that we'll probably have a good mix of formal and informal, because I think the formal is good and will be helpful for certain questions. The informal will also be helpful as we think about like actual community members and young people. And so we're thinking through it, but a lot of things are on the table. But that second half of the year, we're going to jump in, and we can keep this group in mind as we start to plan those things. So you guys know if anything is coming up. We don't mind sharing that, or as we're thinking through that. But the idea is to maximize the input, but also to be realistic about, taking in everybody's aspirations and thoughts. It is only 80,000 square feet, so can't do everything. But we want to be responsive. And I also think, one part of the Metro is it should be it will be a living organization, which sounds good, right? Everybody may say that. In that you heard us say all the tenant spaces when we open, there's no plan to have every tenant space outfitted, because we know there's some things that will learn and grow. There's some folks who will maybe be there in the first year and have some really fantastic residencies or programs, and maybe be a tenant that creates a program there, right? So we're trying to leave the aperture open for how we can evolve. And look, we think back 5 years ago, the needs of the world today are not what the needs were 5 years ago, maybe even last couple election cycles, or however you want to think about the world. And so trying to find ways that like we can be resourceful for the community and changing and ever-growing needs. So programs that might be there the first couple of years might not be there the next couple of years after that. And that's gonna be fun, right?
That's the beautiful thing too. I mean, I think if we can have that be part of kind of the breadth of the space, so to speak, I think that's really important, that it is not fixed in any one way. While, the way in which we are outfitting the space, as Adrian said, we're in this construction phase right now, but so much that drives us is how do we make the infrastructure and the walls flexible too? How do we make sure that it's easy for us to say yes when something new comes in, whether that's a new partner, whether that's a new tool or machine or technology, whatever that new thing might be, we need to be able to say yes to it. So we're really trying to create flexible frameworks and systems to put our mindset on that way for building this out. So it's not going to be a rigid thing. It really will. It is intended to be a breathing environment.
I don't want to mess this up because I can feel the audience in the room and it's not my background, but I think there's like an artist metaphor here. And so I have to be careful, right? So please don't judge me or wait till I leave to say whatever. Which is, you know, we talk about this, seriously, we do talk about the project as being like a work of art in a sense, right? Like in that sense, I'm sure, you know, for some artists, I want to be careful here, you engage in something perhaps with a vision, or you engage in something and the vision emerges, right? And for us, we know kind of going in what's kind of the canvas and the colors and something, but we're not fully sure what the final picture is going to be. And that's because we're holding space for these types of conversations and further conversations. And, you know, young people are going to bring up things we haven't even thought about.
And things are also just changing. So
Things are changing
It's
rapidly.
like, so, I mean, some of these kids aren't gonna, and it's just so critical in terms of housing and, I mean, that's just one thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
It's like, it's rough, so.
I
And
know.
then the other thing is also parents too. I was just in this big meeting yesterday, just about kids and who really need a lot of resources. And parents are so wrapped in. So I hope you're also talking to them and intergenerational,
Yeah.
because we're actually, this is an older area. So I hope you could.
We are absolutely, and that is easy to say, because I was one of those kids. I was told by folks in high school across the, I wasn't college material.
Sure.
So that was before I got 2 graduate degrees from an Ivy League school. Like that was, but had I listened in 10th grade, when my counselor told me that,
Yeah.
right? But going to the Boys and Girls Club, listening to my parents, going to the library, having a few relationships with adults who cared back then, who you had relationships with, I was able to go off and never look
And
back.
you have
So
the infrastructure, like so many of these kids are just, you know, like kids, and their parents. So just the social
it's tougher
services,
nowadays.
all that, all that.
yeah. So it's a work of art that will evolve as a work of art. I hope the metaphor works. But very much.
Really appreciate you coming here and speaking with us and
Yes.
sharing your vision. And thank you for the invitation.
And my husband.
Please do. Please reach out.
Oh, we got your emails.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
It wasn't.
It's okay. It's good. It was really good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Right there, that's yourself.
I will leave, and one other last thing is, as we get into the second half of the year, it's not off the table to perhaps do some group tours. We're limited by how many folks we can bring in on a given day, but we definitely would love to coordinate some of you guys through the space and further talk through the ideas.
Great.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Danny. Bye. Thank you.
Girl, can I shift down? I know, I'll shift down. Things like that. So-
We share. So it's the camera. Okay.
Okay, I'm saying next to me.
Yeah.
I always get your name.
Thank you for coming to see us at Valley Clubhouse.
This is an updated version of what I emailed.
Okay, well, just for the YouTubers out there and YouTube land, this is City Hall ground floor gallery lighting update with Ruth Ann Deb Frank, our Director of Grants Management here in the city.
Yes, hi, everybody. So, did everyone down? You have an extra one. Quite the updated, but, okay. Okay, I can get a copy from you or Tia for something. Hello, everyone. I think not everybody knows me here, but I'm the director of grants. So I worked closely with Sue and, yes. And I was also, with some participation, so it was very special. I don't have as much interesting and fun things to discuss as the last
Oh, yes, we do.
We're so excited about lighting, Ben. We're so excited about lighting. Come on now.
Yeah,
This is,
well, it's important. We've been talking about this since I was on the commission, so we're finally getting somewhere. Some of you know that we applied for a grant over the summer and didn't get that, but there is now confirmation that we have some money left in the capital budget for 2025 through the clerk's office that can help us for the fixtures and the other related that we need for downstairs. And we also just hired a new city electrician who's here full time, so he'll be able to do installation. So I just wanted to come and give you an update about where we are with it and just get a little feedback to make sure that we're kind of headed in the direction that you all would like to see. I did contact 11 or 12 different firms. Some of them are lighting manufacturers, consultants, distributors. It's kind of a range of different entities that I spoke with. We almost have enough proposals in to make a decision. Just to let you know, I did talk to the Rear Center and also the Dorsey to find out what they use in their other spaces. So Mike Dunn is from the Dorsey, but he is retiring, so he wasn't available. What he provides is consulting services on the type of lighting and layout, and then he actually installed, so he wouldn't have really understood for us. But he did point me in the direction of making sure we go with something that's not too low end, something that provides a lot of versatility. And then the Rear Center's company is actually a distributor of different types of lighting, and they have locations all over the country. The one they used was based in Red Hook. So I finally did get through to them, and they just submitted something today. So I haven't had time to actually review it and compare it to the other information that I've gathered. There's a company in Brooklyn that submitted a very good proposal, and their fixtures, I manually have a packet. Yes, Dano.
What is the budget that we have?
It's about 6,500. So I'm just looking for the sheet on Dano. Do you see one in your packet that says Dano? Yeah. So generally, the fixtures that have been recommended by all the firms are spots. There's a very high-end company called Urco, which is in New Jersey. They do huge spaces and they do a lot of museums and galleries all over the world, but they're extremely high-end. And the cost would be upwards of $10,000 per space. They did recommend wall washing fixture, which is kind of like a long light like this. But everyone else recommended the cans. And I think the cans are the right way to go because we can move them and we can zoom in and out and we can watch the layout situation and, adjust it according to the different artwork that we'll have with the exhibition. So,
You want me to say that as the curator of the Dorsey, the spot lighting is terribly problematic for a lot of exhibitions.
oh, it is.
Yeah, and so like looking at these, it seems like some specifically talk about having a wider wash. And I think that for most exhibitions, that's what you're gonna want. And can I say, like, it isn't just about the kind of in-situ experience, it's also about how they'll photograph
Yes.
and shadows. And
Yeah.
unless you have, you'll have somebody that will be able to fiddle with it and make all of the adjustments, but there's a lot to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And also just kind of in terms of the aesthetic, more of a wash, even like nice fluorescents are really the direction that institutions are going to when they're renovating.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Banno. They're based in Brooklyn and they have a division that is dedicated to lighting for galleries. And they they design and manufacture this lighting. And I feel their product, I haven't called references yet, I will do that. Their product does provide versatility in the wide angle. And they've recommended the 3000 K, and this particular product in the proposal is a 97 CRI, which I understand is an industry standard. And the anti-glare is built in. And their proposal includes the ability to change the shape of the light. So if you want a square light and you want it wider, would have that capability, or rectangular, oval, round. It's a separate lens would have to be adjusted, but they've included it in the cost. So I would like to pose those questions to the other companies just to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. But I think what you're concerned about, you have at least one proposal that would address.
And this would include installation, yes?
The installation will be done by our electrician.
So see that, like, to consider the wash is easier for your purpose of when you have an exhibition, you know what to install, the amount of time you would have somebody dedicated to the lighting. Because the settings are amazing, they're some glamorous, but somebody's gonna spend a good amount of time figuring out how to work and setting it up. So
Yeah.
based on the time you have for someone to set up the exhibition, like somebody said, the wash is way easier, because then you don't have to worry about explaining the time for that.
Yeah, we have considered that. And I know Banno provides one. But they still, like, I had this conversation with them this morning specifically about wall washing, and they, for our particular space, they still felt like this was the way to go. Like they were pretty on their recommendation for that. We can continue that conversation though, as I gather a little bit more information. I would like to try to narrow it down to 3 quotes. Maybe by the end of next week, we could get to put in to get a purchase order to get the ball rolling so that we don't do that for the end of the year. We won't be able to transfer it over.
So what's your cutoff?
So the first, I don't see that.
No, I mean to put in a work order.
A purchase order.
I mean, the purchase order, I'm sorry.
We have to have it set up before the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to actually install it for the end of the year, but we have to have a purchase order set.
Should we be very careful about the budget? I mean, if it's 65 and that's what we've got, then
Well,
the high end is really out of reach and we should.
The high end is out of reach. Already have eliminated that. But so I put the mid-range because I'm speaking of designers and consultants. He specifically said that if you go, you get what you want. So if you're going, say to Lowe's and you pick out cans and fries, yeah, you're paying $2,000, you're probably gonna run into. So.
And do we have any more imperative to give priority to local as opposed to spending money within the miles away?
I definitely thought of that. I contacted Zumbotel, which is that large white building on 9W. And I thought, oh, this would be great. We'll have someone from Zumbotel come and visit the space and give us recommendations. It's all local. Well, they don't do that. They only manufacture. And then I said, well, can you make recommendations? And I wound up being guided to someone in New York City. So, I kind of crossed them off the list. Then I also spoke with Wolberg, who is one of the companies that's sending a proposal. They have a Kingston it's not I don't think it's a showroom, but it's a, branch. I think their main branch is Albany, and a couple other locations. So we will be seeing their final, proposal in a couple of days.
And they make any noise about nonprofit support since they made a big deal of it online?
Say that again.
Did they make any noise to you about nonprofit support?
I haven't
We're
really-
municipal technically, but still.
I think the people I'm dealing with probably weren't aware of that program, I'm guessing. But they're sending someone over tomorrow to talk about the layout, so I can see what they say. And then Green Mountain is somewhat local, that's the company that did the Year Center budget. I also, I Googled around just to find out more information, and there's a lot of different companies. Some of them said they would send a proposal or a recommendation, and they never did, so I didn't follow up. I'm confident though with the 3 proposals that we will have, and we actually did get another proposal last spring from an individual who was going to do the put a Home Depot and get tracks. That was the low end. So technically we would have 4 proposals. The other thing I wanted to point out is what the layout would actually be. So there's a sheet that can reproduce all that well. This is legible. Yeah, this is actually from Vano. Okay. Yeah, the yellow highlighted sections are the walls where we make artwork. So I provided them with the measurements of the walls. We did a walkthrough on Zoom. They have the measurements from the center of the ceiling to where the artwork would be, width of the hallway, the length. And they came up with a recommendation to run sections of track along the center of the ceiling. And there's little red marks, which on the larger plan are easier to see. They're pointed at the direction of where the artwork is centered on the wall. And they included 13 fixtures. We met with our new electrician a couple of days ago, and if you're looking at the left side of the map, there's a closet, an electric closet at that end. And he said he could run electric up into the ceiling, going into the hallway, and then bring it down at that end and start running lines on the surface of the ceiling. Originally, we wanted to try to snake it through, but it's really unknown what's in there. And I think we would be able to. So where it stands now is we would run it up the length and do sections of track where the fixtures need to be. Then the connecting wires would be covered with one of those trapping solutions. It's a little bit complicated because there are the existing pendants plus sprinklers and fire smoke alarms, and they're not all lined up exactly. So
Too many.
we want to try to make it blend as well. And it's a big enough. So speak to that. Try to make it aesthetically noticeable. So we'll do the best we can. There's different playing into this, so it's not going to be an absolute fix. I think situation, but it'll be so much.
It'll be so much better. Yeah, people won't even notice that.
Well,
General layman.
Is there anything that you'd like me to take away to think about or back to you on, or do you feel like they're headed in the right direction here?
Richard, did you?
Thank you.
Yes, but so there's, I remember in the past, there was all this discussion about affecting the design of the building. You
Like
remember
the
that?
Shippo stuff.
Yeah, that was Shippo, yeah, I mean, so,
Well, I think it was a real unknown. This was actually when we had Hattie here and she was brand new and there's so many different things to figure out how Ski Hall operates. And SHPO was a question that came up because it is a historic. There was not a full understanding of what our requirements were in complying with State Historic Preservation Office. So Ethan Dickerman, who's our on staff, he works under Sue. He's our historic preservation staff person. He put me in touch with the appropriate person at SHPO. And we confirmed in writing that it's not necessary to worry about a compliance review because it's not grant funded. That's what would trigger it. And if it were grant funded, I described the setting to her and she said, because track lighting is and as long as we weren't disturbing the existing attendance, it would be a problem. So we don't have to worry.
But what was grant writing? I didn't quite understand.
If it's grant funded, if we got a, for example, we got a state grant, it would trigger.
Oh, it's a state grant, yeah. But a private grant?
But only government, probably a federal grant would trigger it too, but other types of funding that trigger.
Cicely, you had a question?
I'm just a layperson here and this is a situation, so I'm just asking, because I moved through that space, but I also don't notice the ceiling. And I'm just curious if the height impacts the amount of light that it's, you know what I'm saying?
With these, it probably shouldn't, like you're concerned that either it wouldn't wash the
same way, like
the fields or touch somebody's shadow or something, so it should be fine.
It's just really high ceiling.
The light would be coming down to the wall, so it's not. I think I understand what you're saying, like somebody walking in front of it.
Or, I don't know.
Or like feeling.
Just feeling, yeah.
It shouldn't, because they're they're good.
Yeah,
Lights, so it'll really direct the waves where you want them.
Yeah.
But my question is, these bulbs are, I'm a novice at that. I'm a performer.
Lights too. I'm an artist, but I don't know the technical.
When you're looking at this kind of lighting, looking at long term, when they burn out, do you have to replace a bulb or the whole entire box unit? Is that what you're calling?
Just
Like, just the bulb. Just
I
the
think
bulb.
just the
They're
bulb.
expensive.
The useful life of these fixtures, and I think it's kind of standard for probably any of the lights that we'll look at, is 50,000 hours. That's for the entire fixture. But you can replace bulbs.
Okay, and then what I wanted to add, during our discussion with the mayor, he asked Roseanne to take back the question whether or not this can be on a timer. So that, just like all the buildings in, all the fixtures in the city, the lights get turned out at 8 o'clock, as we've learned during the major installation, we're walking around the dark, on Saturday for energy efficiency, and then they're all on an automatic timer. So the mayor asked to take back that question, whether or not there could be some kind of a timer on these that go off and on, so we don't have to rely on the receptionist or kit or others to turn it on and off again. Right?
Yeah, I did ask that question. I haven't had time to answer
Yeah,
yet.
it's just the sound.
Worst case scenario is it's on its own switch, so it would be like whoever's leaving at the end of the day would switch it off, and it'll be dimmable. We want.
Now you have an in-house electrician, that's maybe the problem. That's just setting timer with the switch. It's a pretty easy fix, and when an in-house electrician.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great, yes, thank you for this.
What did you mention?
I know, I educated myself. Sure.
The lights are full spectrum or close to full spectrum. I gather that's something that.
Well, I don't know the technical definition of what that means, but I can say that the industry standard for gallery lighting is to go with the 3,000.
It varies also from gallery to gallery.
Yeah, A lot of
Museum.
companies do things differently,
Yeah,
but if you're looking for something that's going to be consistent, which I think you need to do in this space because it's not just a gallery space, it's a hallway, it's a,
so it has to serve both.
yeah, and we have doorways into offices, so we want to try to keep it simplistic to a degree, but the standard is the 3,000 Kelvin and the CRI of
That's
above 90, and this is, we're looking at 95 to 98 fixtures that we've got. So that would mean that the CRI helps the artwork appear as it would in closest to natural sunlight. Did I explain that well enough? So anything above 90, between 90 and 100 is what we would be shooting for that. So
Yeah. So.
Great.
We also want, to feel like the space glows. I mean, people walk in and it's, it's a welcoming thing rather than now where it's so dingy to walk into it. You feel like, oh, here's where I pay my traffic ticket.
I think Sue might have something to say about this, but I think that it's the wrong color on the walls is really defeating everything. So I did raise the question DPW of what do you need to do to leave?
Next on the
Might take a while.
All right.
That's right. It really
So, Ruthann, you're also on the next agenda item, which
Yeah.
is the Distinguished Artist Award. Do you want to start us off on this?
Well, I just have, Ruthann has some very creative ideas because, as I think I reported, the mayor advised or recommended me to include $500 for the Distinguished Artist Award, in my 2026 budget request to the Common Council. So I guess the question is, will that money be enough? And if not, how do we raise funds for the remainder of the budget, which has been 2,000 a year out of my budget? Since we are coming down to only a quarter of what we've been used to, where do we go from here? And Dan had some ideas, that, she had brought forward. So I figured, I might as well just say for this discussion as well.
I actually don't remember what my ideas were. I think probably
Art
maybe
Hudson.
Paula Artsman. Yeah, I think there's a lot of sources locally that we could turn to for smaller grant.
No, I'm just talking about, you had said pattern it after their county executive awards. And how.
Oh, yes, we were talking about, if, the Minnetonka Arts District were to run it, they could use it as an opportunity to do a fundraising event like the Ulster County Executive Arts Awards that Arts Hudson does. So it could be a fundraiser for you, and then it would cover the costs of the event. Does that make sense?
The county and ours in Hudson.
They have a partnership, so we would model our partnership that way too, if that's something.
Do you know the nature of their relationship, the partnership?
That would be a question for DJ. Do you know?
Yeah, that was it's been a while. I'll get back to you.
Okay, so we'll find that out. I did want to see about interest in sharing the Distinguished Artist Award for next year from the commission, since I was chair last year or the year prior, the last award.
I think you were chair for 2.
Was I?
It's been 2.
So yeah, it's time to pass the torch. That's my say. What is it? Well, I've already established a pretty good process, workflow of it. It requires finding a selection panel of community members, a representative of our community. So it's an unbiased selection process that, the commission doesn't have any decision making around it. So it's a community chosen
How many people did you have on it? So,
We can discuss that, but I have it all.
okay.
Are you throwing your hat?
No, yes,
I'm interested in co-chairing it.
Share with you. No, that's exactly it. I don't want to be like, oh.
Yeah.
But I feel like what's your time frame, or what is the time frame for selecting the recipient of the next award? And
Well, the award
The
is,
ceremony.
we already have a date set. I've given to Elisa Tinty, which is, I think, the
May
Thursday
21st.
before Memorial Day.
May
Oh,
21st.
It's already in
I
the
know.
cycle.
So
Same.
prior to that is, I think we started
We
in
did.
January, is it?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
We've gone through the processes of establishing the selection committee. It's a community nominations that comes through my office, just as if we were doing anything else. You know, you put out through summer the call for nominations and what have you. Make sure that we, you know, as a commission, we get the word out to as many people as we can. Please
Yeah.
nominate some folks.
Yeah.
And once the nominations come in, then, check me on this, the selection committee has been established by the chairs or the commission.
By the chairs.
So the commission doesn't have any input in those that are going to be members of the selection committee, like you said, to make sure it's
Yeah,
not,
no voting.
there's nobody's touching it from the commission.
Well, I mean, I
That's
suppose it would be reviewed by the commission beforehand, but to make sure that there's no conflict of interest. But I would put it in the hands of the, I mean, it was in my hands to choose the chair. And, you know, I also had input from prior chairs of the Distinguished Service Award to sort of codify this, so I'd be able to hand that off. And it would be pretty straightforward. It's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great to be able to-
I say a bottle of wine. Trade off of papers and yeah, of course.
Now that the conversation about meeting, you know, if the commission wants to maintain the $2,000 budget for this, how is the 1,500 raised towards the awards and reception?
That's kind of why I brought up the time frame. Because if BAD is interested in this, you know, replicating this kind of model, and I think it could be a very good fundraising tool for the entity in the way that it is for Arts and Hudson to do the Ulster County Executive Awards. That's
In
one of
Dutchess,
their-
just last night, they do Dutchess.
I would just need to get more nuts and bolts, meaning
Well,
how
it's,
that relationship works and then.
I'll listen, you Zoom with me.
Yeah. I mean, I've already kind of casually mentioned it to the executive committee and they're like, well, we already have an award. We have multiple awards.
We're
So-
doing the awards. It's still just like this. This is the county executive award.
That
I get it. I understand that. I just
This
need
is
more.
the Kingston's award or the commission's award.
Right.
Your award.
I know, I understand.
The funds and.
I understand. I just.
But we contract with you.
Yeah. I understand. I just need more context for the board in order to understand it fully.
Exhaustion also, because you were the early bits, the other one, but
I think if you were, you know, we figure out all the details and then BAD declines on that, we have time to pursue some other smaller grants to make up the 1,500. You can go to Stewart's. we can go to
Hannaford.
Let's
local
talk,
entities.
DJ, let's talk offline about what it looks like and see what the model looks like. And go
I
from there.
mean, any opportunity of response, because if the MAC can't do it, I was going to also approach another organization to see if they'd be interested in it. But, you know, I really, when Ruth Ann really brought this to our attention, that Arts Mid-Hudson, it's not their award, it's the county executives, but they make money. This is a moneymaker for,
They
a fundraiser
administer it,
for,
yeah.
pardon?
I was gonna say, but they also do all the work to put.
Yeah, they do.
If you're doing a fundraising event, it's a lot of work and they get a lot of sponsors
Yeah.
and you, so.
Right, they do, but in lieu of the fact that you know, any fundraiser is good for an organization, and yes, it does take work, it's all to be considered, I know you're a board member. So, let's find out the particulars.
Yes.
Let's find out the particulars and see if there's any, weight that Matt can take on, if not, then there's another organization that may be able to pick it up as the sponsoring organization that raises the funds concurrently, or we'll go to that. So what's the timeline on this? Because Ruth Ann is just talking about money that probably needs to be applied for, because a lot of these smaller sponsors make their decisions perhaps in January and March.
No, let's
Yeah.
go to-
This is the last quarter, and then there's another one coming around in March, and that might be too late for us.
Too late.
It might depend to, we're looking at.
Right.
What about just a straight up sponsorship, receiving sponsorship donations for the Distinguished Artist Award versus
Another
at
option.
least for this year?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just not enough lead time. I mean, yeah, I could approach the executive committee with more context about what that partnership might look like based on the model of Artsman Hudson. But if there's a way to sort of circumvent the inability of the commission to raise money or lobby the way that the city has, you know, brought it down about that until a not-for-profit is formed, you know, we could still work out some partnerships to receive the funds that we could reach out to individual donors that might be interested in supporting this to continue.
What might the timeline be then? Because we have two co-chairs now, if you could, provide Lisa shadowing them, the timeline from 2 years ago.
Yes.
You know, we did this, we did that, and
I
then
looked
at
at
the
that.
party, if you could, you know, and CC us all in, then we know what we have to work with, what kind of parameters of time that we have, and then we would.
Yep, I will email, maybe by the end of tomorrow, and TJ and I will talk,
Yeah,
by next
I'm
week.
gonna text Melissa now.
Okay.
And are we still at the $2,000 mark, that we need that $2,000 in order to effectively do this, because and that's why Matt was involved, because we cannot give a cash award as the city, Matt was the contractor.
I mean, I have the monies that we spent to review the budget and I don't know about any expenditures that you had.
It's not because you were the contractor, we just gave you the money.
I know, but there was programs and other sorts of things that were done in-house.
Except for my stat time,
Okay.
there was nothing else.
Okay, so I'll review that.
But that's how we remember, that's how we really do it.
Yes.
Because
Do,
otherwise, we can't give a cash award. So if the commission still wants to give a cash award, it has to be done through a contracted organization.
Mhm.
And if that contracted organization is raising funds, that's another, it's something to consider. But like we all know, every event, tax the staff, and you've already got a lot of turnover going on over here.
I do.
A lot of changing.
Change, yeah. Okay, I'll follow up.
So once we get that, like I said, there's another organizations that I will tap into to see if they might be,
By next week.
for us. And then if not, then, you know, but we probably need a quick turnover time to do this discovery investigation.
Yeah,
Sounds like the simpler the better,
yeah.
rather
I
than
think
just
so.
a full.
I was just gonna say, I like what you were saying about the sponsorship. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's 500 is
to do
about 1,500.
Yeah.
Maybe you could set up a rotating sponsorship that somebody sponsored this year, next year it's, you know, a different sponsor. $1,500 is not, you know, it's not a lot.
It isn't a lot.
Well,
Well,
no,
no,
yeah. I mean, you could make it bigger and raise more money, but at least just to do this event, at least right now with the limited time, maybe
Yeah.
that would be the way to go. So.
Great, I mean, we
that
could
is-
think about other things that we have not codified, such as presentation from the artist that, you know, into the budget. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just look at the budget as it stands, and I will follow up with y'all by the middle of next week, no
Just
later.
I guess the work perspective had nothing to do with us, or this, did it? It was really nice, it was really nice.
It was very nice.
It was really, really nice.
Yeah,
It was super,
pretty good time.
Let's figure out
In between meeting, maybe.
Okay, so we move
Yeah.
on. So I'm sorry that the time got away from me on the agenda, but it seemed really important.
Oh, it's
that
fine.
No, we do that.
Yeah, that's what I always worry about when we have presenters such as patterns, presenters such as Metro, Novo, Metro, because we're gonna give people half an hour and there's no way. But this is the only time that they get with the commission, otherwise they're trying to track you all down, it's.
Now
You're
it's
not
really.
gonna have a conversation together.
So it's really positive.
Yeah, I think it was about.
Yeah. Thank you for the.
Thank you so much.
Well, we have 4 minutes. Yeah. And I have to run. As we normally have to, and I'm leaving late. Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Thank you. So if I could just, really quickly, with my report, I keep you all involved in everything I'm doing, so I'm gonna continue to do that. That seems.
Do we want, an offline executive session?
So again, with that.
I mean, not today, but
We'll
another
go
day.
offline with what I would report, some of it I'll just leave to the mayor.
Okay. Well then,
Well, then,
all right.
this was an incredible, I can't say enough how, impressed and overwhelmed I am with the knowledge that I have around me and the shoulders I stand on, what I discuss with you, and I'm crying now, it's all emotional. And, we do have some expirations. Some people are turning out. So that, I've talked to the officers about in order to, consider that. And, moving forward, we do still have to fill the public art committee. We have 2 more seats to fill. So I have some homework that I'm going to give the officers on that so that we can, really look to fill those 2 seats and have a form of public art committee. Get it formally moving.
What kind of term is it?
For public art. Renewable.
That's all of us.
DJ, I leave you to the closing. Thank you very much, everyone. I gotta go talk about dreams now. Excellent.
Any other pieces or new business that we didn't cover that is very important right now because we have to vacate the room in 2 minutes? I guess we're okay.
I just want to say, talk on what it said, having been in this commission from the very beginning, how incredibly it's relevant in how it's matured. It's structured. It's what we always wanted.
May I have a motion to close the meeting?
Things get done.
Second with Dina and unanimous approval? Yay? 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 Consider